Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. This morning we have been convened for a very important conversation, I'd say, on the matter of the needs assessment and case management services and resources across our country. The European Union Technical Assistance Team, with the support of the Minister of National Security and the Citizen Security Secretariat, have engaged in what I consider the short haul for the long haul in determining what the needs of our country are, specifically as it relates to case management. Within my hand is perhaps one of the most comprehensive documents of case management that I've ever read as it relates to the needs specific to Jamaica. And for that, the team that did the work on this piece of document deserves a wonderful round of applause. Unfortunately for you, I will be your chairperson for this morning's proceedings, but I can guarantee you that we won't be here for a very long time. Minister, at least for an hour. Minister of National Security and/or Deputy Prime Minister, the Honorable Horace Chang, Ms. Diane McIntosh, the Executive Director of the Citizen Security Secretariat, Mr. Rodriguez Ruiz, representing for the European Union, and I see just entering the ever so elegant Ms. Favour Williams, or Minister of Education. We also have with us this morning Mr. Luca Leconte, also from the EU delegation, Ms. Sharon Weber, and Mr. Andy Murray, or very strengthened partners from the Foreign Development and Commonwealth Development Office. Also Ms. Heather Sutton, the team lead for the EU Technical Assistance Team. I also see SSP Brooks, and other members of the Jamaica Constabulary Force, and Mr. Lloyd Distant from CMOC. Ladies and gentlemen, from HEART, Trust NSTA, from Positive Pathways at the USAID, and all our other very distinguished colleagues and friends, welcome this morning. Without further ado, I will invite our Executive Director from the Citizen Security Secretariat, Ms. Diane McIntosh, to bring greetings.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. The Honorable Minister of National Security and our Deputy Prime Minister, Dr. Horace Chang. I see Honorable Minister of Education and Youth and Information, Ms. Favour Williams. And I understand Honorable Minister Marsha Smith from the Ministry of Finance is also here. Mr. Anicito Rodriguez Ruiz, the Head of Cooperation for the European Union, and his colleagues from the delegation, our distinguished partners and stakeholders in citizen security, and that's a broad coverage for everybody this morning, and our ladies and gentlemen, good morning to you. I greet you with an abundant love and blessings this morning, for indeed it is my pleasure to share this momentous occasion with you all today. The Ministry of National Security has been making significant strides over the last 5 years to improve citizen security using a community-focused and an integrated multi-sectoral approach. And you are here today because of the leaps and bounds, yes, made in breaking down the silos that existed among and within ministries, and the progress made in opening up the door to address the critical issues affecting the youth of this country, specifically those within the most vulnerable communities. The Ministry of National Security, through the Citizen Security Secretariat, is grateful for the sponsorship and support of the EU delegation to conduct this needs assessment of case management and psychosocial services across ministries, departments, and agencies. The findings of the report have provided both quantitative and qualitative evidence of what has long been known, there is a dire need for a more specialized approach to social investment initiatives targeted at youths at risk of becoming victims or perpetrators of violent crime, and the importance of advancing an integrated strategy for case management and psychosocial support cannot be overstated. And I'm very happy to see the level of support here this morning, because we do need to understand the problems or challenges that we have and the support that we need to pump in at this point. This may well be due to the difference between adding an additional case manager to prevent a child from falling into a life of crime. So we're encouraged that steps are being taken to advance the dialogue. The Citizen Security Plan has seen major progress in our integrated multi-stakeholder approach to addressing the risk factors of crime through prioritizing, especially our 25 to 35 school strategy, and similar strategies to train, certify, and recruit at-risk youths. And our process owners are here, Heart and Education, very much on board with the strategy. I would like to acknowledge our partnering government and non-government agencies who work tirelessly to keep the proverbial wheels turning, because we at CSS do push hard, and without them, there would be no CSP in terms of the implementation and rollout and that integrated approach that we are putting forward. I would also like to thank our international development partners such as the EU, USAID, UNICEF, FCDO, among others, who have provided endless support and expertise and who we continue to look forward to for the continuous support. It is my hope that our efforts and the contribution of us all will provide the protective factors that provide inclusivity and turn the tides towards creating a safe and healthy Jamaica. And I believe, based on the approach that we're taking, which is very evidence-based, very measured, very scientific, that in a couple of years from you will see that difference. Thank you very much, and welcome again this morning.
Thank you, E.D. McIntosh. The Citizen Security Plan is situated on an all-of-government ethos, one that at its core prioritizes different ministries, departments, and agencies convening at a point of agreeing on strategies and ways forward to improve the lives and resilience of every ordinary Jamaican. That Citizen Security Plan is partnered with by the European Union. And here this morning to bring greetings in that direction is Mr. Anicito Rodriguez Ruiz. Anicito.
Thank you very much. Honorable Dr. Horace Chang, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of National Security, Mrs. Courtney Williams, Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of National Security, Mrs. Diane McIntosh, Executive Director, Citizen Security Secretariat, Mrs. Shauna Trowers, Chief Technical Director, Ministry of National Security, all representatives from different ministries, departments, and agencies attending the meeting, also to my colleagues of the EU delegation and UK High Commission. It's always a pleasure to bring the greetings of the European Union and of Ambassador Marianne van Steen, who cannot attend because she's not in the country right now, to events like this one, presenting findings and recommendations that have the potential to produce a change in the way we approach and allocate resources to solve important development issues, because security is very, very linked to development, and development is very linked to security. I'm also satisfied to see representatives from so many different ministries, departments, and agencies confirming the decisive switch happening in Jamaica toward a more all-of-government approach to address crime and violence prevention. We will hear today the presentation of the results of a rigorous assessment of the demand and supply of case management and psychosocial support services that have demonstrated here and elsewhere to be effective in breaking the cycle of violence. Therefore, I will not insist too much on this point. I will leave to the speakers to go in deep on that. But however, I would like to highlight that case management and psychosocial support are not only good for crime and violence prevention. The services are also necessary if we want to apply the mantra of Sustainable Development Agenda, not to leave anyone behind, not to leave anyone behind. These services support the most needy children and youth to be successful in education, vocational training, permanence in jobs, conduct a healthy life, and can achieve their full potential and build, if so desired, a sound family life. And in this way, contribute to the development of the country. So, these services are essential for many ministries, departments, and agencies to achieve also their own development objectives. Mental health and psychosocial support services in general are a clear priority that is constantly underfunded almost everywhere in the world. In Jamaica, this assessment doesn't arrive isolated. The European Union already supported a Capri research study published in 2021 about mental health services for children, and from the same think tank, a research on children in state care that also includes important consideration on the consequences of lack of guidance and psychosocial support for children in conflict with the law. However, the report presented today allows us to make an additional step assessing what is concretely possible to do, taking into consideration available resources and a necessary incremental approach due to the limited human and financial resources available in order to bridge this gap. For the European Union, that has in the budget support aid modality its main channel to support Jamaica policies and development priorities. This assessment is an important piece of this work. It allows identifying the gaps in the medium and long term, provides solid grounds for policy dialogue, helps planning and looking for necessary resources internally and externally. It contains indications on where to channel additional resources, like the EU budget support to urgent and critical needs. Before closing, I would like to take this occasion to commend the work of the researchers, Jennifer Jones and Noah Levy, as well as the commitment and coordination of the Citizen Security Secretariat and the high-quality technical support provided by the EU Technical Assistance Team. It is there. It is time to leave the floor now to Deputy Prime Minister Horace Chang, whose partnership and leadership in gathering all of us here to move forward in making of Jamaica a safer and secure place. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anicito. It was an indictment on me, and I did say that it's unfortunate for you that I was the one chairing your program, for my negligence for having not recognized Minister Smith from the Ministry of Finance. I've sat in so many steering committee meetings with Minister Smith. It's the mask. It's the mask. I would also like to recognize Ms. Colette Risden, the Permanent Secretary from the Ministry of Labor and Social Security. This needs assessment report was born out of the Citizen Security Plan, which is led and directed by our Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of National Security, the Honorable Dr. Horace Chang. I will now invite him to offer his remarks.
Thank you, Chairman. As testing, all right. Let me recognize my colleague, Minister Ministers Favor Williamson, Minister of Education, who's been a very key partner with testing. Who's been a very key partner in the entire execution of the social investment side of city security plan. And of course, Minister Marsha Smith. Oh, I didn't need that. Much better. Minister Marsha Smith in the Ministry of Finance, and I'm very happy to see you this morning. And the Marsh don't hide that very fine face behind him. We'll recognize you. Minister Smith has responsibility to, in fact, monitor and the expenditure side of the operation. But her presence also, as a member of the steering committee, involves ensuring that the budget allocation for the various social investment program is in place and that they are spent right and spent well. Good to see you this morning. If I spend a little more time with you, not because I've known you as a colleague out there in the field, but Minister Williams is always with us, And Minister, I'm very sorry to say it, the good book says like the poor always with us. Right. But she has played with us very much activity. I'm not sure my permanent secretary is here, but I know many members of the staff of the Ministry of National Security is here. Mr. Dan McIntosh, Director of the ED, Mr. Andesito Rodriguez Ruiz, Head of the Cooperation Union, and the other team members of the European Union, other members of the diplomatic corps here who assist partners across the globe. I gather Ms. Risden is here from the Ministry of Labor and Social Security. I'm not sure I see anyone from the Ministry of Health. If you are here, just, welcome. Another critical partner, although it's a holistic arrangement in government, we need certain key areas of government to participate. I ask to recognize, of course, a number of the consultants, including Ms. Jennifer Jones, Mr. Noah Levy, Professor Julie Meeks, and various guests participating here this morning. I'm very pleased to join this morning, and that's the opening comment of most politicians. But I'm really happy to be here this morning at the launch of this case management and psychosocial service research. And I want to thank the partners who funded the program. The need for such services is self-evident, but to have the actual empirical data done and the appropriate research is crucial in executing the program as we proceed. If I may make a little comment before I proceed to my prepared text, maybe one of the biggest problems we face in this year, of course, is Jamaica's attitude to mental illness, social attitude towards anything to do with emotional research. I'm sorry, I must recognize my good friend, Mr. Lloyd Distance, who is no longer a friend of the chamber, but he's very much one of our business leaders in the country and has been very active in reaching beyond the boundaries of the private sector. No, there is I want to recognize a kind of negative attitude towards psychiatry as a subject in Jamaica. And even the many individuals who do psychology that I've had to deal with from university level, many of them do psychology not for the skill set in psychology, but quite frankly, because I sponsor a large number of students from my constituency, assist, not full sponsorship, from my CDF budget, that's what I spend most of the money on. And they do it because it's the least expensive course in university and gives them some flexibility afterward. They get a tertiary degree, which is good, and I commend that, but it's one of the least expensive course, not because it's one that is desirable. And oftentimes they use it as a base to get into other activity, because once they get the first job, can save some money, they go to do human resource management and a number of other things besides clinical psychology. I mention that because looking through the executive summary and the study itself, there's a demand to add to a cadre of psychiatrists, psychologists, and individuals who are trained in this area. But even medicine, which is supposed as I don't know if the right term, the political, but let's say it's the elite of the professionals in the field, but people, even in the field of medicine, the doctors who turn to do psychiatry often looked up by their colleagues that you're going to do mad medicine, you're a mad doctor. That is that kind of, it goes that far. And I think we'll have to work, Mr. Andesito, together as a country to overcome that challenge because we need the professional service. Minister Williams looking at me and tell you she needs in her schools, like today, in large numbers, because it's a major part of our challenge. You know, I've been through a rough week, and while in the security service, the country looks at numbers, but I have to look at the character of the homicides in our country. And when you get in a rural district, deep rural, in the hills of Clarendon, some young man who otherwise appeared to be quite normal, slaughtering entire family of a mother and her 5 children. There's some deep-seated cause that we have to find and overcome before we get to that stage. The policing, which I need, and the majority of homicides have to be dealt with by policing, will never stop that kind of activity. We have to find a way to reach those families early and those young males who divert that direction and prevent that kind of brutality emerging in their personality. And I said, it's not part of our genes, it's not Jamaican. This morning, my remarks will begin to look at the more academic side of this program, which is necessary to lay the foundation. And I begin with a quote from the Capri study, which was done recently. Testing, challenges to measure social programs for at-risk youth. This study was published in 2021 and brought to the public's attention the fact that the level of public spend on social intervention for over a decade has not resulted in an equivalent level of returns within the communities. And I must also qualify. Having agreed with this and said this out, we have never said, absolutely never said, that we don't believe in social intervention. In fact, I use the term social investment. This government, in developing Plan Secure Jamaica, on the security plan arrives, the focus is to ensure that there is not just an incidental mentioning of social investment, or that it is an activity for projects that our partners fund, and it does provide a nice report at the end of the day and disappears. It's designed to integrate social investment in the fabric of government and to ensure the institutions that serve our challenged communities, who are large, the poor of our society, will have the kind of public service that is geared to reach them and to provide the quality that will change and transform the communities. That's the essence of the security plan. And that's where we intend to put more and more funding. And in commenting, I will say if we had started that program many years ago and maintained good quality policing, I thought that was someone said wrong, effective policy necessary, in the short term, we would not be in this position we're in today. And I don't think that's a debatable issue. You know, acute crime has to be dealt with by police officers, social workers to go and talk to a man who is earning 100,000 US by scamming and carrying a submachine pistol in his waist. It's madness. You don't need to know that. First of all, the social workers are not going to go into the community. And if they're going to the community with the imprimatur of the gang set, it means they have to give some of the money to the gang members. That's all it means. And the condition continues. So I need the police to clear the space, as we are doing in one of our signature pieces of legislation, zones of special operation, and allow the social workers to interact with the needy families and ensure that at the end of the day, we can have effective, successful, transformative change that is sustainable. The study underscores that young men who are at risk of becoming involved in violent crime are a primary target of social intervention that, in general, aim to change their behavior, provide them with a marketable skill, and divert them from joining gangs. However, despite of this investment of multi-billions in a plethora of such project intervention over a decade, there has neither been a widespread change in the most obvious violence indicators. In fact, it continues to expand. Now, the kind of Dupstein schizophrenic discussion, which I objected to, and my friend Dr. was over there, I know she understands where I am and what I'm thinking. We are friends again, right? I don't know the phrase. Is that, you know, we spend this money and we never objectively analyze the social investment aspect. So we say, do more investment, nothing is happening, and defund the police. It couldn't work. Didn't work. And that's why we're on a new approach to ensure that we fund the social services in a structured way and at the same time develop our police force in a professional manner to be able to deal with the kind of violence out there. The indicators refer to shootings and murders and domestic violence have all remained at a very high level. Neither have the intervention produced evidence that suggests that they are working in the way they should. They have been spent. So, hence the new direction. Even before the publication of this report, last year the government had shifted the policy focus from social intervention to social investment. I use the term because I don't want people to have to intervene. I'm not coming in from outside of Jamaica or leaving that the government is distant from Canterbury, so I'm going to intervene, do something, or walk out like big powers intervene in the country, beat up some people and leave it, and it gets worse. Claim they create peace. It's part of working with communities, that's part of the society. In order to ensure that sustainable quality public service to the people of challenged communities that will impact criminal behavior, we must have strengthened public institutions. Public institutions meaning the public health clinics, the schools, the provision of social services from the Ministry of Labor and Social Security, the Social Development Commission that integrates the community. It's crucial to have them functioning effectively in an all-of-government approach to underpin all of our social programs. If we get that right, then I'm sure we'll have the transformative impact we have. This is why the government established a business advisory group to which the Security Secretariat relates to guarantee continuity and transparency of social investment activities. And the Minister is here this morning as part of that, with all the ministers involved. The report that is being launched this morning provides the necessary baseline assessment that will inform the development of meaningful and transformative social programs in the parishes of Kingston and St. James as a starting point. And they will be institutionalized and therefore expanded and scaled up very easily. The need for the empirical data of this nature, however, to drive policy implementation was a central point of my sectoral presentation last year, and which I reiterated again this year. That is to say, social development activities must be relevant in order for social investment to impact on crime. Social investment must be data-driven to make sense to people and then monitored empirically. This is the unparalleled value of the needs assessment. I repeat, the unparalleled value of the needs assessment of case management and psychosocial services. It is telling us that those in need of intervention would represent nearly 1/3 of the combined population of Kingston Metropolitan Area and St. James. Do we therefore ask, why is violence so high in these areas? 14,000 children and adolescents require case management, which by extension is family management, and over 1,200 need attention from medical professionals such as psychologists and psychiatrists. The estimated current demand is at least 14,123. Our agencies currently have a capacity of possibly serving 6,223 individuals. Well, they're serving 6,223 and a capacity of only 3,700. And I see my Ministry of Health colleague looking on because the end result that they require to provide the kind of service we are referring to, and even where we provide individuals in schools, it is the Ministry of Health that has responded for the essentially the mental health services, including psychosocial services, and training the individuals required. The need assessment is highlighting the areas that require additional work, and our coordinate efforts need to be strengthened. Of note, the report highlights that case management and psychosocial services must be provided alongside education, training, other programs that will be most effective among the high-risk beneficiaries and families involved. So parent support, parental training and guidance for young parents. It is said today the grandmothers are less than 30, almost, in many cases. These are people not only the age, not only reflects a social dysfunction, the age of conception and all that, but the unemployed mother of 30 is heading a family that is a risk going forward. And we'll have to identify them and do what we can to begin to change the atmosphere, ecosystem around them. The Ministry of Natural Security has increased our collaboration with the Ministry of Education in particular, and are working closely with the Ministry of Labor and Social Security and the Ministry of Health. Health, of course, had a bit of a, let me use the right term before my health people get at me, but certainly the COVID pandemic maintained their focus for the last 2 years, and therefore they don't have the level of integration we want in our programs, but it's coming, and we are beginning to work more to ensure that health, education, labor, social security, and local government are crucial partners in dealing with the issues in the challenged communities, and working with the officers in the Ministry of National Security, which includes not just by crime prevention team, some of who are here, but the police, who has re-energized the CSSB division of the police force. We'll continue to explore the areas of common interest to pursue jointly. Small projects we are doing, of which there are several, but worthwhile mentioning our 25 school program in which we are working to develop a proof of concept, in that we're using the schools there as the entry point into the community, to find the families, the truants, and everyone, to monitor on an ongoing basis the results of work with the entire community and what emerges after that. That program is one of the basic programs we're working with, but the concept being developed, which will evolve out of the Ministry of Education, is to ensure that those many schools we have across Jamaica that are in need of support to transform the quality of education will get the support. And the Ministry of Education takes the lead. Minister Williams is very committed to it. She understands our school system. She's a product of a system, from primary school right through. Did her university training, of course, that's our finest university in North America. But mention that before closing, it is not a debatable issue. I wanted to say another part of it. It's impatient debate to understand that to transform the institution in the challenged communities is the most crucial thing to do. We do a lot of work. We do back-to-school treats. We provide some lunch on one day or two, all kind of nice things, and worthwhile doing. It shows there's some heart in the community. But you leave the school as it is when your time finishes, you know. And our worst schools and the least qualified of our teachers are in the most challenged communities. So that's a fact of life. You can name them. Wherever you go across Jamaica, the traditional schools, by and large, still remain as the name-brand schools. One or two have evolved, but not many. So as we talk about social intervention and social investment, we cannot be really hoping for change. While I said the kids who are born in Canton, well, if they get into Barks Road, it's not bad, but you know, it's a good school. But most times they cannot get in these schools. If you go across the country, there are a few primary schools that are named Reddy's Road, St. Richard's. But the people from Black Ansley are not getting into school, right? And then they don't get into a good quality secondary school. And when they do make the break, they do extremely well. Our brightest kids are coming out of Norwood and Glendevon, but that's where the biggest gangs are located as well, because the opportunity is not equal for all. And the school up in particular, we find the kids, the single parents with malnourished kids, they're in the clinics. We have to find them. And that's where we begin to identify that there has to be an integrated approach. It is well known, the mother, single mother who is not working, will have the malnourished baby. And malnourished doesn't mean organ dry up. They might be just pure sugar and water, they're fat and bloated. Either way, they're malnourished. And then they don't go to schools, so they're the truants. And you have to find them at that stage to put them on a path of opportunity and production if we're going to break the development of violence in our society. That's where they come from. And while the government increases its level of cooperation, and we commend the EU for its support, the direction of the support, which goes into budget support, speak of for providing support to the technical assistance provided to the citizen security budget support program, why Mr. Smith is here, which means we are directing the money through the government budget into the institutions, is a crucial policy shift and on what the government will insist on maintaining. It does in no way diminish the need to have community partnership and involve all our members in the community. Indeed, all hands must be on deck. The private sector, the churches, the community, genuine community organizations. I use that term pointedly, especially to relate to the corporate area. There are other community leaders, but I'm speaking to formal community leaders and all those who have an interest in ensuring we provide opportunity to our humble citizens and to improve the lives of people in these difficult communities. Indeed, we need all hands on deck, meaning I need every single organization in society. They said, you know, the strength of a thread is no more than the tensile strength of the single thread. Combine a number of them to a cord or a rope, and the strength of that individual cord or rope is much more than the sum of the individual strength of those. So, as I close, I wish to underscore again, our focus on getting social investment right does not take away from the need to a strong, professional, highly trained, intelligent, driven, and technology-supported police force. There will be sustainable change only when there is public safety within the community. Sustainable reduction in criminal violence and the lasting transformation of volatile and vulnerable communities require both elements: strong, effective policing and data-driven social investment. I've said this over and over, it's the two legs of the government's policy. And both are equal. If one is shorter, one you're going to follow when you walk. So that's just a practical thing. I'm going to book it to somewhere that might succeed. The two must go together. Transformation and change can only be achieved within a safe and secure and peaceful environment where everyone can enjoy their basic rights without fear, and where they can feel comfortable to work and raise their families and seek to achieve their dreams and ambitions. That's what I had hoped, and that's what the objective of the policy is. And this case management study is an extremely high quality, major step in that direction. And I hope we can stay together to execute, because this country's greatest problem, and most developing countries, sadly, we don't execute very well. We plan very well. We talk a lot. We're professionals. But when we have to execute, and hence the need for the monitoring, empirical data-driven monitoring by the City Security Secretariat. Because we must, at the end of the day, measure what have we achieved in the last 12 months. Why didn't we achieve what we set out to do, and how can we achieve it over the next 12 months? Empirical data-driven monitoring on a real-time basis is crucial. It is just a fact of life. We don't execute as we ought to. I said elsewhere in another program that some people thought I might not have been around long enough to do the program. So whether it's political or personal, there's this view. But I think we have gotten beyond that in this particular program, and I want to close by really commending the researchers and look forward to the presentation with pride, and to working to ensure that it is executed. The Citizen Security Bureau Business Group meets every quarter. We get a full empirical data, and we look forward to using that machinery to ensure that this program is executed and implemented. But we do recognize the challenges. We're going to have to help us train some more psychiatrists, Dr. Ward, and psychologists. Thank you.
Thank you so much, DPM Chang. And while I took a lot from the presentation, it would be remiss of me to not reiterate the fact that social intervention cannot exist successfully unless it does so within the context of robust data management, data mining, and using data as the ground on which we stand to make strategic decisions and to inform how we plan for the future. On that note, I will now invite the experts, Ms. Jenny Jones and Noah Levy, to tell us what the data says in this regard. Lady and gentlemen.
Good morning, Honourable Minister Chang, Honourable Minister Favour Williams, Honourable Minister Marsha Smith, Senor Aniceto Rodriguez Ruiz, and your colleagues, Ms. Diane McIntosh, Dr. Jonathan Johnson, and the many valued guests here. Please excuse me that I have not perhaps recognized all of you. This is a presentation on a needs assessment of case management and psychosocial services in 10 government agencies. It's focused on the 3 parishes of Kingston, St. Andrew, and St. James, where are located the 5 ZOSOs that were in place at the time of writing: Denham Town, Greenwich, Augustown in KSA, and Mount Salem and Norwood in St. James. I want to quote from the minister on the Cocoa Peace murders, the horrific Cocoa Peace murders. This kind of savagery is not about policing. It is a far deeper psychosocial problem around which we have to unite as a country and as a people and find the vulnerable ones and begin to get at the root cause of this prevalence of violence. It points to the value and timeliness of this study. And I just want to add that the minister, in speaking of the psychosocial, correctly identified it as a holistic approach. This includes the physical well-being of a child or an adolescent. As a child divestment officer said to me, you can't interview a child when they are very, very hungry. You have to go out and actually buy them some food. So this side of it is also very, very important. Okay, here are the MDAs in the study. The Ministry of National Security and the Ministry of Education and Youth together in the 25 school strategy program. So we actually counted them as one agency in the study. These are the 25 schools serving most of the children from the 5 ZOSOs. In the interest of time, I'm not going to go through the MDAs as you can see them, and you will meet them as we continue. Here we have the words of a manager in a government agency. Basically, as a society, we are in denial. We grossly underestimate what many young people in particular are going through. We do not embrace the issue, and therefore we are not dealing with it. The vulnerable ones who are the main foci of this study are school students, 10 to 17 years old, in the 25 schools program, youth in skills training and heart, particularly those from the inner city, children in conflict with the law, kept in juvenile corrections in Kingston and Spanish Town, victims of gender-based violence and other violence, and unattached youth. Again, it's focused on those located in the 5 ZOSOs already mentioned. However, we're dealing with the agencies that serve the entire span of 3 parishes, where reside virtually 1/3 of our population. The study found 3 major challenges. First, the huge gap between needs assessment and available psychosocial support. Where are these gaps found? We start with the schools. The school-wide positive behavior intervention and support being developed in schools across the island defines 3 tiers of intervention for violence prevention. Tier 1, universal prevention support, which serves as the foundation for the behavior and academics of 90% of our children in school. Tier 2, estimated at 7% of our students, requires the targeted prevention that can be provided by the intervention of a case manager, usually a social worker. Tier 3, estimated at 3% of students, requires the intensive individualized prevention that can only be provided by psychologists and psychiatrists. Some will need medication. These children need to be attended to at child guidance clinics. Then there are those vulnerable youth in training at heart who are at risk of dropping out. As reported by managers, it is 40 to 50% of the youth trainees from the inner city. Now, heart has a low dropout rate, 11% during COVID, 3% otherwise. But among the inner city youth, it is 40 to 50%. Then there are the juveniles from 12 to 17 years old in remand and corrections with high levels of self-harming behavior, many suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. There is always a suicide watch on in the girls' sections. The survivors of gender-based violence, as well as those exposed to violence at home or in the community. Children beaten severely or traumatized by witnessing their mother being beaten, often many times, or persons witnessing the murder of a relative or a neighbor. Finally, there are the unattached high-risk youth, mainly school dropouts, the most vulnerable group for gang recruitment. Here we're looking at the agencies where the demand is concentrated. Students attending the schools in the interministerial 25 school strategy, who are from the 5 ZOSOs now, of course, more than that. Heart trainees from the inner city. Children in juvenile corrections. Victims of gender-based violence who come to the Bureau of Gender Affairs and their workshops all over the country. Victims mostly of intimate partner violence who come to the JCF domestic violence intervention centers, which some of us may not actually know about. They started in 2018 at Constant Spring, and there are now 10 of them. Unfortunately, not one in St. James. The 11th will be in the new Lacovia station. Victim Services Division, attended by victims of all ages, all over Jamaica. Who deals with these vulnerable individuals? The child guidance clinics of child and adolescent mental health services under the Ministry of Health and Wellness. CPFSA, our Child Protection and Family Services Agency, which assists about 9,005 children a year, 4,000 in residential care. Child diversion, which diverted over 500 children from court and therefore from juvenile corrections over 19 months when we did the study. The social safety program of PATH, which assists 130,000 families a year, but has over 1,000 families with extraordinary needs, needing and requiring psychosocial support. And there are other supply agencies that are on the screen there and which we will meet as we go through this.
Good morning, everyone. So we're looking at this first challenge, the huge gap. So in order to truly appreciate this gap, we must contrast this demand with the supply, quantitatively speaking. Let us first look at the demand coming from the cohort previously listed. As a reminder, the following figures represent data from the 3 parishes of the ZOSOs mentioned and where it was possible to collect community-level data from the ZOSOs specifically. Before proceeding, I'd like to clarify that in this table, gender-based violence survivors fall under VSD, BGA, and JCF, domestic violence intervention centers. As we can see, a total of approximately 10,500 individuals from this cohort are estimated to be in need of case management services, and 1,200 individuals to be in need of psychiatric medical intervention, which begins with a psychologist and, if necessary, graduates to a psychiatrist. Of note is the same numbers across these different services for juvenile corrections and the gender-based violence survivors. And this is due to the severity of the traumas these individuals have faced. Estimates for heart were not calculated due to the unavailability of risk assessment for heart trainees. Having looked at the demand, we can now move to the current coverage. What exactly is the supply? Firstly, we can see that there are 104 case managers, social workers, or equivalent professionals across 8 of the 10 MDAs. You'll see that heart and the domestic violence centers at JCF are without any currently. International standards dictate that a case manager should work with no more than 30 cases at any given time. This means that these 104 professionals have the capacity to manage just about 3,000 cases at any given time, However, the reality is that they are managing almost double this. That's about 6,000 cases. In terms of psychosocial staff, only 5 of the 10 MDAs we looked at have psychologists, all of which include part-time psychologists. And only 2 of the 10 have psychiatrists in their staff complement. Based on international standards for these professionals, the psychologists across the 5 MDAs should have no more than 210 cases under management at any given time. These 5 agencies are managing 5,000 cases currently. As for psychiatrists, the 2 MDAs mentioned should manage no more than 450 cases. But between those 2 MDAs, 1,650 are currently under management. So the gap is evident. The demand for case management from this cohort is 10,500. Only 6,000 of these individuals are being supplied with these services, and they are being supplied by case managers who only have the capacity to manage around 3,000 cases.
Okay, so now we are looking at the comment of the head of an NGO serving in one of the most violent inner city communities. There is a huge disconnect between the needs of at-risk youth and the available support. If they can't access help, then you prove them right when they go into crime. How can the government respond? Here are some suggestions from the study. As you have seen, we are looking at the long term, the ideal, which is 15 years, takes us up to 2037, 2038, and the short term, which is from this year, 2022 to 23, to 2026 to 27. Tough decisions have to be made. There will be trade-offs, but remember, the cost of crime was estimated in 2019 as up to $633 million US, or 85 billion Jamaican.
So let's take a look at the requirements to reach this short-term recommendation and the ideal terms of the staff complement. Most agencies need at least double their case managers, and several need triple for them to arrive at these recommendations just for the short term. Child and adolescent mental health services is an example of one that needs a significant increase, as they are the backbone of mental health services for this demographic. They're the backstop for all other psychosocial services. The increase in psychologists follows a similar trend, doubling and often tripling or more of the staff complement. Of course, for many MDAs, 5 of them to be specific, it means the introduction of these professionals to their staff complement for the first time. Reaching the ideal is something that even the most developed nations are yet to attain. This is in part due to the lack of importance placed on mental health globally. It is only recently that the destigmatization of this equally important aspect of our health has begun. The human and financial resource constraints also make this task a difficult one, of course, and this is why we looked at these short-term recommendations to bridge that gap between the current situation and the ideal. So what do the children, adolescents, and victims stand to gain from getting to this increased level of staff complement? Well, as outlined in this table, reaching the short-term target means case management ratios are cut by as much as a third or more for most of the supplying MDAs. And it's simple. This means that each case is receiving more attention, and it's the kind of attention that is needed to make real headway with the children, adolescents, or victims being served. The extra time and resources could be the difference between a child or adolescent staying in school or training, or not, and consequently becoming a productive member of society versus a perpetrator of violent crimes. So having looked at these figures, we can now put it into financial terms. Recurrent labor costs for case management and psychosocial services across the 10 MDAs currently has been costed at 302 million Jamaican dollars. As you can see, HART and JCF DVI centers, as mentioned, are without these professionals altogether currently. So to achieve the short-term objectives that have been outlined, this compensation would need to be just about doubled, with the child guidance clinics under the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Services, the MNS case management team, and PATH being recommended to have the most significant nominal increases, or needing the most significant nominal increases for the short term. So that's the labor. We also looked at facilities, and in terms of these facilities, the short-term objectives or objective calls for a recurrent budget of 162 million and capital investments of 153 million. Just to remind you, this is over the next 5 years. And this is to address a range of problems, including, pardon? Yes, 5 years within. So this is to address a range of problems, including those concerned with infrastructure, database management systems, transportation, and in some cases, grants or funds for social interventions targeted at the vulnerable groups that we looked at. Of note is the recommendation to place a child guidance clinic at the Bustamante Hospital for Children, which, as you can see, is a significant cost there, and allocate recurrent funds for the opening of a child guidance clinic in Montego Bay, currently severely understaffed and without a dedicated premises.
Okay, so we look now at other challenges. Second major challenge, because we talked of three, is insufficient coordination. The overview of the EU, and I'm going to quote, technical assistance to the support to citizen security budget support program. You know, these titles are always very strange. Under which this study falls, speaks of three expected results. And I'm not going to quote them, but I'm just going to say that two of them specifically point to coordination within government and within other institutional stakeholders. One of the challenges that the CPFSA Chief Executive Officer, Mrs. Rosalie Gage-Gray, noted is the need for systems that reach to the ground level to support children and families. Despite the MOUs, she said, this is still not at the level it needs to be. In some programs, optimal outcomes are critically linked to coordination. For example, the MNS MOEY case management of Tier 2 students and referral of Tier 3 students to child guidance clinics. It's critical that the case managers and the school guidance counselor work together and coordinate as a team in the school and with the staff of the child guidance clinics.
So the final challenge looked at as a third challenge concerns databases. So throughout the interview process, it was discerned that some of the MDAs are without a database management system. Some make use of Excel, but often don't fully utilize the functionalities. The result is miscommunication, poor accountability, and a limited overview of the organizations and their service delivery. So there's a loss in valuable time and resources that could be otherwise spent on case management and other services. There are some specialized systems in place catered specifically to the case management process. Worthy of mention is CPFSA's SOHIMA case management software, as well as the case management software being developed by the MNS case management team currently. These are examples of the types of systems needed across MDAs to improve data management for the case management process. And this is because this will enable easy data entry, analysis, reporting, and it has a potential to facilitate data sharing across MDAs, thereby reducing this problem of a duplication of efforts by these MDAs working with similar demographics.
Okay, so we're going to look now at the recommendations. So the first one, make the investment of resources in prevention now at the right dosage to meet the short-term scenario, to reach an 800 million recurrent annual budget and a 153 million capital investment within 5 years. Well, all the agencies, of course, are serving the 3 parishes that the 5 ZOSOs are in. So this is really should reach 3 parishes. Yeah, okay. Now, the MNS program, interministerial program with the Ministry of Education, is only going to be happening in the 25 schools that reach the ZOSO children. But everything else applies to the 3 parishes. So that's Minister's looking at the, and his eyes are popping at the amount, I think. Dosage. Oh, he says it's a small amount. Okay. Look, when we're talking of dosage in an intervention, we're referring to quantity or duration. So to give an example of quantity, the MNS case managers are clear from their CSJP experience, and this was emphasized in its evaluation, that having too many individuals on one case manager's list drastically reduces the effectiveness of case management. It's pretty obvious, but they tried to do more in CSJP. These recommendations are focused only on 3 parishes, 1/3 of the population. But if we can't get it right here, where does this leave us as a country? So in terms of recommendation 1, there are some suggestions for prioritization. Prioritize child and adolescent mental health services for funding in the first 30 months. It is the backbone of psychosocial services. Case managers in the 25 schools attended by children from ZOSOs need to know that when they send Tier 3 children to a child guidance clinic, accompanied by their parent, and this is mandatory, and it's one of the many reasons that social workers must be included in this program, along with the case managers. They want to know they can get an appointment within a week, not within the 4 to 16 weeks, depending on whether it is Kingston or Montego Bay. This is the current situation. And this is an example of dosage in terms of duration. And I want to just mention here that Minister St. James is sort of an outlier when it comes to these services. For example, the child guidance clinics in Kingston, there are 2 of them, and they operate every day of the week. In St. James, it's once a week?
Once a week.
Yeah, in St. James, it's once a week. Now, there's a smaller population, but there's also a great need. Once a week is not enough, and the staff, very, very few staff, and those staff are also serving the adults. So, that's not they're not dedicated to the children. Juvenile corrections urgently requires reintegration units in Kingston and Montego Bay. Many children, the director tells us, show signs of rehabilitation, but when they leave, some go back to the same negative situation. They are even more stigmatized by their family, their school, or their community. They are not wanted, an extra mouth to feed. It is this group that needs to be taken into a reintegration unit where they are supported for maybe a year in going back to school or entering hard training or getting a job. Along with school dropouts, these are also among the most vulnerable groups for gang recruitment. Currently, with no psychosocial support, Hart is losing 40 to 50% of youth trainees from inner city areas. These are the males who may turn to gangs for support, or the females who may become pregnant, sometimes for gang members, or may become members themselves. They have lost perhaps their only opportunity to fulfill their potential and make a decent life for themselves. They need psychosocial support to help them deal with their many burdens so that they can take this 1 year of training that gives them a level 2 skill which can enable them to find a job. Recommendation 2 is improve effectiveness by better coordination among MDAs and by engaging community members. Hold community case conferences in each ZOSO community with the participation of social workers, case managers, psychologists, mentors, etc. from state and NGO agencies, along with school principals and guidance counselors and zone commanders. To do this requires a community coordinator in each ZOSO community, as well as one staff coordinator based in the CSS, the Secretariat. It's not going to happen otherwise. The community coordinator needs to be in touch and have good relations with each entity in the community. They remind, persuade, encourage attendance at these case conferences, and will probably be the person who takes notes and circulates them. The CSS coordinator keeps in touch and provides the same encouragement and supervision of the community coordinators. And in this way, the Citizen Security Secretariat will have the notes of all the community case conferences, an overview of everything happening in the ZOSOs. To reach unattached youth, collaborate with and provide funding to NGOs and those churches who include outreach as an important church activity. Young men are the main, as we all know, main perpetrators and victims of violence. So programs that reach them must be included. These are groups that the state usually cannot reach. Consider shared spaces to save costs where agencies need to expand. And this is our recommendation for opening a branch of the Bureau of Gender Affairs in Montego Bay. This also provides very useful one-stop shopping for clients. Support the use of existing social skills and expertise resident in the community. There are elders as well as mature youth leaders who are experts in the history and dynamics of a community, who know the most impoverished or otherwise needy families, and are very useful guides to service providers. This recommendation was widely supported at the stakeholder validation session for this study. There can be no effective psychosocial support provided to children by caseworkers without social workers to provide support for their family. The message: don't make the mistake of trying to help the child or student without linking with their family, from where their problems often arise. Dr. Ganesh Shetty, one of the island's few child and adolescent psychiatrists, who supervises the child guidance clinics in Kingston and who also works in schools, said it is frequently the parent who really needs the psychosocial support rather than their child. And the PATH social workers who we spoke to also said this: tremendous problems among the parents and the families who are suffering themselves from post-traumatic stress disorder, from their own upbringing. Case managers and providers of social services need in-house psychosocial support. They need help after dealing with some of these cases. The PATH social workers say even reading some of the files makes them extremely upset. This can revitalize their service and help prevent burnout and resignations.
So for the third and final of our main recommendations, we're looking at improving the efficiency and reducing duplication through better data management and data sharing. So database management systems catering to the needs of the case management process are needed. In particular, user-friendly systems that allow easy data entry, analysis, reporting, and data sharing across MDAs, as I had mentioned earlier. I think it's important for me to mention now that this change from the manual data entry to these database management systems might take time. Takes time to make that adjustment from this old-fashioned way of collecting data. So it should probably be included in this adjustment, change management, to help facilitate this switch from manual data entry. So this can take the form of one shared system or compatibility between different systems that have already been developed. As I mentioned, CPFSA has a case management software. MNS, the case management team, is currently developing one. So this would be to facilitate communication between these different systems. So the more feasible option would be to look at a combination of the two, since some agencies, as I said, already have these systems. So we'll have some where we might develop specialized systems for them, new systems, and then also creating communication between the already existing systems. Secondly, it's recommended that a database management system task force is started to bring together the MDAs over the short term to work on sharing data across the board and limiting the duplication of efforts targeted at these demographics. Finally, I want to just take this opportunity to mention for CPFSA that we were able to do an in-depth analysis of their ability to facilitate other MDAs joining their system. Right now they have the capacity to handle a lot more cases, that system, at CPFSA. And so I spoke with the systems administrator at CPFSA, and I got to understand that if the necessary investments are made, this system can be shared across MDAs, and a lot of money can be saved, a lot of funds can be saved by doing this as opposed to developing brand new specialized systems for each of the individual MDAs. So before we end, I'd like to acknowledge with gratitude our very supportive technical assistance team, Ms. Heather Sutton and Dr. Elizabeth Ward. Thank you all.
Thank you, Noah and Jennifer. I think I speak for everyone when I say that that report was really useful, very comprehensive, and very informative. However, sad it may make us feel in terms of the dire nature of the situation. What it does is that it presents us with the facts so that we can plan and strategize for the way forward. I did promise that I will have you in and out in an hour. And so without further ado, I will invite the technical assistance team to lead this session on comments from ministries, departments, and agencies, after which Professor Meeks will lead us into the wrap-up and next steps.
Good morning, everyone. Protocol having been established on behalf of the technical assistance team, we would really like to thank you, Honorable Deputy Prime Minister Chang, and all of you here with us in person and online. We have quite a few folks joining us online as well. Thank you to the research experts, Ms. Jenny Jones and Mr. Noah Levy, for the tireless hours and hours and work effort put into this report. We've had a backstage view of all of the work that's gone into this report, and we do believe that it is an important contribution, which I think for the first time quantifies the size of the gap between the needs and the available services. It puts a cost to that gap, and it takes us to a short term before we could get to an ideal long term over 15 years. Also, as you saw, makes some valuable recommendations on how to use better the existing resources through increased collaboration and coordination, specifically at the local level, the community level, and then also through improving data collection, management, and sharing. But you have heard from the researchers now. We would like to have you hear from a few of the MDAs here today that are covered in the report. We would like to start actually by welcoming some comments and feedback from Dr. Judith Laiba from the Child and Adolescent Mental Health area in the Ministry of Health and Wellness, and to invite her to comment particularly on the child guidance clinics. As we know, this is the entity we heard that is at the end of the referral line from many of these other agencies. So please, do we have a portable mic?
Good morning, everyone, and all protocol observed. Let me thank Elizabeth and Heather for inviting me to speak. I won't be long. I want to thank the EU for the study that they did on child mental health. It was very disheartening to see the results, but I was very heartened by the fact that this thing, like somebody was really interested in, documenting it. So I'm very, very grateful for that. I'm also grateful for this study. We had a lot of back and forth, and I think it has described the situation pretty well. It has. In terms of health, we have made representation to our peers. First of all, to see if we can try to get some more psychologists. So we're supposed to be, we are writing up a justification for that. And I've been told by Ms. McIntosh that it should be like a fast track once it reaches Ministry of Finance. So we look forward to that. And we look forward to yes, and we look forward to boosting the services really in the West, because they have really suffered. The problem with Cornwall Regional and all of that really, has really made a dent in our services. But I would just like to pledge our commitment to continuing the fight and to doing our very best that we can. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Laiba. And the next person we would like to invite is Ms. Forbes Robotham. We know that, as we heard for HEART and STA, that they can potentially successfully graduate 25 to 40%, 50% more trainees from these hotspot communities with some crucial psychosocial services. So please.
Thank you so very much to the technical team, Deputy Prime Minister of Jamaica, executives of the EU, and other esteemed members of the audience. I must first pause to say a hearty thank you to Jennifer and Noah. Very committed, extremely committed to the process. We had several exchanges, interviews, discussions, and they really dug deep to get to the heart of the realities of what is happening in and across Jamaica with our youth. Minister would have referenced the Capri testing, which is one of the studies that is very dear to our hearts at the Heart and STA Trust. And perhaps the Citizen Security Project would have really opened our eyes when we sought to gain access to that study, and puts more into perspective what is coming at us
at the Heart and SDA Trust. So we speak about the young people coming out of the high school system, and more often than not, or perhaps most often, the bulk of these, a large percentage of these young people end up at the Heart and SDA Trust. And yes, we oftentimes boast about the fact that we train to international standards, but we cannot deny, ladies and gentlemen, the other issues that impacts the training that we offer, the psychosocial issues. And yes, we do have career development officers in-house, but these career development officers do not have the technical competencies, neither do they have the capacity to diagnose or to treat with the issues, the maladaptive behaviors that we see coming into the training centers that more often than not employers would speak about when they go into the world of work. And so for us, the research, the findings, the recommendations, we're heartened by it. In my estimation, 153 million over 5 years is a very minute amount or budget to really begin the process across 3 parishes to see some of the results that we can gain from having case management and psychosocial intervention. And so for me, it's a bittersweet moment. I'm excited because we're armed with the statistics, which never lies, by the way, so the researchers say. So we're armed with the statistics, we're armed with the data to take back to our executives, and I am extremely sure that having the reporting to the OPM, that we're in a much better position to get the additional resources that we will need, Minister Chang, at the Heart and SDA Trust, so that we can go into the ZOSO communities and be even more effective at what we do. So thank you so very much. We look forward to playing our role in ensuring that our youths get the necessary intervention that they need. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we would actually like to hear a bit from Ms. Claudette Hamilton from Juvenile Corrections. The report again highlights that juvenile corrections requires a reintegration unit to support the transition of some formerly incarcerated and detained individuals, and these individuals clearly are at some of the highest levels of risk.
Good morning, everyone. Protocol having been observed. The mandate of the Department of Correctional Services is rehabilitation and reintegration. And Jennifer would have captured it very well in terms of what it is that we do, but what are our greatest needs and why is it important? The children that comes to us are those that have complex issues. They have been suspended from school. They have been expelled and not back in a school system for a while. They have suffered trauma. They are victims. They're offenders. And so the issues are complex when dealing with them. So the institutions, both correctional and remand centers, are equipped to give them the rehabilitation that they require. But how important is vocational training and academics when the children are there in mind and not body? And so the psychosocial aspect becomes very important. And so our greatest need as it is right now is psychosocial support, very intensive, and with resident psychologists and psychiatrists to address all these needs. The other need is a transitional center, because most of the children that comes to us come from environments that enables and aid and abet the kind of behavior that they display. And so a transitional center would be very important, because what we get to do is that the institution is halfway there in terms of what it is doing. It has the teachers, the instructors, it is conducting the rehabilitation initiatives, but the reintegration aspect is lacking. Without this transitional home, without this halfway house that we can have them stay for a year, 2 years, depending on their age, to get them to fully back into the society where they can continue their education. We have children passing C6, but remember there's a stigma attached to it. So if they're in an environment where they can leave and go to school and come back, and then we help them to find a job, then we're on our way to stemming crime and violence as it relates to our children. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Just before I move on to the next speaker, I would like to mention somebody, I think it was Ms. Forbes-Robotham, mentioned the depth of the report and the research that was done. And I just wanted to point out that the executive summary that you all received is just that. It's a summary. We do have the full report, and each agency has there's a very detailed section on each of the agencies in that report, and we'll be happy to provide that report, circulate it to everyone after this meeting. So finally, I'd like to invite CDT Trowers from the Ministry of National Security to say a few words. She's joining us online. As part of the interministerial 25 school strategy, the Ministry of National Security, of course, as you heard, has partnered with the Ministry of Education to provide case managers to some of these 25 schools. And we've seen that we will, in order to maintain that caseload, we will require some additional case managers in the next 2 years, but perhaps more importantly also is the case management database to adequately track progress and share data with other agencies. So, Ms. Trowers.
Hi, good morning everyone. I've been online. I'm happy to see that everything has been going well. I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person. So as Heather said, I think I agreed with everyone what they said before. What is important is data. Everything has to be data driven. And we can only make the impact if we know what we're dealing with, and the case management database is critical. But a part of outside of the case management database, the database doesn't stand alone unless we have coordination from the MDAs at a certain level in terms of both resources, because we do know that case management is expensive. And so there has to be a commitment, I do believe, across ministries, similar to how we do a work plan, that across the ministries we recognize what is needed and then apply the resources. MNS has charted the case management database, and we're in the process of providing for the development of that. Initially, I do know that we had an agency that we were looking at, but we also have been looking at an alternate. And so I think from that point of view, if we have more substantial conversations, and I can't overemphasize the need for coordination, working together, both in terms of the resources and how we plan our activities. And I think if that is done, then we'll be able to provide for the short term, because every single ministry would have resources. If combined, we could provide for the resources in a more integrated way.
Thank you so much, Ms. Trowers. At this point, I think we have just a few minutes. I would open up for maybe 2 or 3 other comments from agencies as well, or questions. Maybe we'll take them back to back.
Morning, everyone. Morning. Dr. Chang and other invited persons. I'm Colette Roberts-Risden, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Labor and Social Security. Let me thank the project for the study, but I would love to invite you to come back to my ministry, because part of the, and it has put the gravity of the gap front and center. The reason I'm asking you to come back is the ministry, the gap is actually larger than what was displayed. And so it would be interesting for me to see, having done that additional analysis, what really is the true gap. So you spoke about PATH, but unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, PATH is not the only program the Ministry of Labor and Social Security administers. So the same social workers deal with your emergency relief. They also deal with other social programs within the ministry. And so that in and of itself, we have been grappling with it internally. How should we really be managing this social work function to be fully effective? And so your study is a start for us, because at least it gives us some data. Another challenge that we find, and I don't know if the other entities have that as well. So we recognize the shortage of social workers, and to be fair to the Ministry of Finance, they did grant us some additional temporary positions. But the recruitment, many of our young persons graduating with their social work degree will enter the profession for a year or two, and then they leave. So what is it about the profession? Because we could increase our capacity, double, triple, but what do we need to do to retain them? What is it? Is it just a function of pay? It could be, but what are some of the other things? So you mentioned, for example, I think somebody mentioned in one of the focus group discussions or something, where the social workers themselves sometimes need that psychosocial support. So what should we do as a country to not just train persons in social work, but get them being practicing social workers and remaining as social workers? That's another side of the coin that, for me, as a ministry that utilizes so many social workers, would be quite helpful for me. So, I'm issuing an open invitation for you to come back and do some additional work and analysis with us. That would certainly help to improve us. Thank you.
Absolutely. That sounds like, I think it could be a study within itself. And I think we can take maybe 2 more comments, and then I would invite the researchers, Jenny and Noah, if they would like to comment on anything as well. But certainly the point of, I think, as was mentioned in the study, the burnout and turnover from this type of work is high, and it is very difficult, and therefore the need for some in-house resources to debrief and for psychosocial support of the staff themselves. Yeah. Do we have anything? Oh yes, I think so. We have Mr. Orville Simmons from the Ministry of National Security. I think he also would like to make a comment.
Good morning, everyone. Just to flag the importance of timeliness in the provision of the services. If we are not able to respond in a timely manner, we run the risk of losing that trust that case officers would have built up with clients. At the moment, case officers are doing their thing on a 25 school strategy. Come September, it is expected that very shortly, the services identified under the plans will be provided to the students. Now, if these services are not provided in September, October, November, December, we can recognize what that is going to do to the trust factor between families and case workers. So just to flag how important it is for the psychosocial services to be provided in a very timely manner. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Simmons. We have one more comment over here. Do we have the microphone? And then I think we can turn it back over to the researchers if they'd like to comment, and we'll move on to the wrap-up.
Okay, my name is Jacqueline Dillon, Deputy Superintendent. I am the JCF Domestic Violence Intervention Liaison Officer. And just to say thanks to the team for their thorough research on the services and the needs of the DVI Care Center. I am begging that we respond, you know, we get some amount of response when it comes on to, especially our social workers, because we do not only deal with victims of intimate partner violence, we do deal with family violence, and it has taken a toll on our center managers who are basically doing almost everything. And so once we get that support, and I support the person who just spoke via social media about having it done in a timely manner, so that at the end of the day, the kind of services and support that we ought to give to the persons who reach out to us, that we are able to do so effectively and continue to have that trust, because the trust is important when we talk about domestic violence intervention.
Absolutely. Thank you for that very important intervention, Dylan. I would like to, I don't know if Jenny and Noah, if you would like to comment on anything. And certainly, Deputy Prime Minister. Would you like to come up?
No, just quick, one question, maybe start up. 3 short questions. One, in executing, the coordination which we have established with the government is set to work. But, you know, with my colleague ministers here, one of the challenges we'll face is there is a lot of institutional apathy within a lot of our agencies. And I'm not being unduly critical, but our country has gone through some difficult times, and agencies have very limited funding. When resources are short, you kind of hold on to what you have. The biblical parable is true. Those with the least resources tend to hold on to it because you have no more to get. And to get, so the coordination, not just the institutional arrangement we have made with the Business Council, where I said we are represented, all the permanent secretaries, etc., who give the orders. But there's a change in thinking at the lower level to integrate work at all times. So when a social worker goes to a community which is still challenged, there shouldn't be a fear of talking to Superintendent or any other police officer in place in CSSB. And the CSSB they are evolving into calling on the other social workers to work with them. So that's one area I think we have to pay some attention to, because it's more thought process than actual institutional arrangement. We need the data, but you can set up a lot of data collection and you get the right paperwork, but the work is not achieved at the local level. And 2 short, one is local skills. When you engage local individuals in the community, they have to be compensated for that, but that's the reality. A very poor person who is struggling every day to find a single mother who can be quite good, bright, but if she has to work every day to find lunch money for her kids, to tell her that she has to give volunteer work 3 times a week, you know, it's not going to work. And therefore, you have to consider, if you have local, we have the community liaison officers, Ms. Troy is not here, the social workers, unfortunately, is still establishing the profession in the way they want, don't like when they call them community social workers, but that's effectively what they are. And you have to identify individuals who can do the work and work with them. I've seen them operate, and they can be very effective, but it cannot be voluntary. Okay? If you do it, I have some structure. If you do it voluntary, you really get into the self-denial referred to by one of our contributors. So you pretend this is voluntary, and you give them someone on the side, you give them no accountability, and then they become mixed up as well. If you begin to look, how can I use my access to fundraising to get some money? And the last thing I mentioned is, of course, you didn't mention here, and I find it a bit strange, funding of NGOs and churches. If the government don't have enough money to fund the institution, how do you extend it? You know, quite frankly, I expect NGO to come with their funding, because if the government has limited resources, and that has been on our child, we split it up into little pieces and samples. So we do an NGO here, an NGO there, and a community group there, and another group there, and that funding also begins to duplicate efforts. And the reality is just, I think the budget, and I commend this researchers, the funding, the way it was done, I found quite practical, and I want to commend it specifically. A lot of these things are done, and they're really like very excellent lectures. But this looked very practical, very achievable. And that's why I raised the issue, because you see, you're going to end up with a little discussion with government. We're not supporting that, but it's a philosophy. Why should I fund an NGO when I have an agency doing the same work and not optimize my expenditure within the agency and have the philosophical change I want in there. It is something that needs to be looked at. Churches come in, they make a big contribution. Again, the same thing applies. The state funding an organization of faith versus ensuring the institution are strong and complementing the institutional work by working in a collective manner. So the social worker will work with the church organizer, but I begin to wonder, in addition to it raises accountability issues. Every dollar government spends is taxpayers' money, and I have no control over how an NGO or church organize their funding. And while they will do it as a church, they'll do it very well, but the one that deviates, and if for the wrong reasons, I mean, we've had that with the biggest NGO in Jamaica, money was spent a certain way. If it's taxpayers' money, they're going to hold me accountable, not the church deacon. Right.
Thank you so much. I'd like to turn it back over to our researchers, but just to mention that I think clearly the points that were raised are very important. The coordination requiring a mindset change, I think, is very important. The idea of compensating for local skills that are used. And then certainly I think, and I think the researchers can comment more on this point, but to the using the churches and the NGOs, I think the point is that they may have a different type of reach and a different ability to reach and connect to some of these other services.
Mm-hmm. I think there are different skill sets that are needed and different types of community linkages. And again, if the structure is in place for and a clear framework for accountability, I think we can find some of the important skill sets that are sometimes challenged. You have to account for it. Yeah.
The agency doing the work don't have enough. I'm sharing what is, So my agency tell me every time we have a project. She's not a bad agency, she's not a bad rock early on for me. Over the political, by both, by both parties. Right? It is said, but it's not sound agency in terms of it has good reach. It has more reach than most other agencies. In every parish, the SDC. But I've said the SDC is a very good example to call on. They have extremely good quality data, look at good community connection. If they work with a church, they can achieve a lot. But they try to create a separate organization, and they don't have any money. The biggest complaint of SDC is that, Dr. Chang, you send a project officer come to work here, they come to me for the data, they come to me to visit the community. They come to me to introduce them to the community leader. They come to me to meet the police officer. They want to meet the clinic. And then they get paid twice what I get. They have a budget to do things, and they do what they want to do. And when they're gone, I have no money. Neither way. But they sit in my office and I give them a community study I do update every year. And I tell them everything about the community. But they do what they want to do. And I who know the community, I who have the trust of the community, have nothing to do. So, it's something that has to resolve to go forward.
Jenny?
Thank you. Well, Noah has just said the first thing I should do, and he's absolutely correct, is thank all the MDAs for their cooperation. And sometimes you really harassed them. But they were very, very open and willing to share. We harassed hard, I can tell you. But, we had to obviously go back to them many times, so we do want to thank them. I want to underscore Mrs. Roberts-Risdon's comment on social workers needing support. I mean, we did mention this. They need psychosocial support too. So there must be some internal system or maybe shared between ministries where, once a year, or it's probably more than that. I mean, the social workers would know, those who work with them would know, where they can sit down, share, cry if necessary, you know, talk about the stress. And once you've let it out and shared it and realized you're not alone, there's lots of others, and got some counseling, you know, you can revitalize. And I'm not a social worker, but, you know, generally that is very important. I agree with Dr. Chang that community persons must be paid when they give assistance. You know, it has to be carefully monitored. You have to be careful of competition, you know, you have to be careful of community dynamics. But if you're in touch with a good gatekeeper, a good, you know, a couple of good people in the community, elders who know all about things, this is possible. In terms of the NGOs and church leaders, you know, yeah, accountability is critical. And basically, you have to have somebody in the ministry who's dealing with them alone. And this is one of the staffing problems. You cannot do this unless, but if it's worth trying it, in my view, because it might bring some very, very valuable inputs and reach people that otherwise, and provide the ministry with information that otherwise they would not have. So, I mean, I think that's all I want to say, and thank you very much for listening. Noah?
Thank you. Okay.
Thanks to everyone who participated in that discussion. As I am a man of my word, we're just about wrapping up the program, so I will invite Professor Meeks to do the wrap-up and next steps.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and all protocols observed. Before I do my wrap-up and next steps, I would really just like us to take a moment to acknowledge someone from this area who has recently passed, Sarah Newland Martin, who was OD, who was Administrator and General Secretary for the Kingston YMCA since 1988 until present. And Sarah was a tremendous stalwart, responsible, as the Observer put it, for molding countless young men, and young men who were not from the most advantaged communities or situations. If you could just acknowledge Sarah for a moment. Okay, thank you, thank you. So in terms of the wrap-up, this has been such a rich presentation and report. It can lead us to such an improvement should we take it seriously and do the implementation that the minister mentioned, that we tend to fall down in our execution. We really need to take it to hand. It was a very rigorous set of research, as Senor Ruiz mentioned, and it is really worthwhile. The conclusions, and much of this is a recap, but I think it is important. The report highlighted the gap between the needs for case management and psychosocial support necessary for the success of the Citizen Security Plan, and the supply capacity for these services currently in the parishes of St. James and Kingston, where the ZOSO communities were located. For case management, the estimated current demand was at least 10,523 cases, over 10,000 cases. Of those, agencies were currently serving over 6,000 cases. But based on international norms, the capacity to serve only just over 3,000 cases. Those are based on international standards. I think that those figures are really the basis of what we were looking at. And of those 10,000 children and youth, over 1,200 need medical attention or attention from medical professionals, psychologists, and psychiatrists. The agency is already serving over 5,000 individuals, to which the 1,200 would be added, with current capacity really to serve only 450 by international caseload standards. Those are really rather frightening gaps. Based on the challenges then, the recommendations that were put forward by the experts were right on target. The first one was investment in prevention. So it is not a brand new budget situation. Where are the funds going to come from? We know that the funds are scarce. But this is an investment in prevention, and this should be made over the next 5 years to meet short-term goals. I also like that we have short-term versus ideal long-term goals. It is like you're going to do a long swim across the Atlantic, and you look at the Atlantic and you say, well, I can't do that. So you don't even go in the water. But if you are making stops, if you are achieving what you can achieve in short bursts or relatively short bursts, and you see that it is achievable, you may enter the water, and I hope that we will. So over the next 5 years, to meet these short-term goals that were set out, we must work toward an annual budget of 800 million recurrent and a one-time investment of 153 million in capital expenses. And what should we prioritize? In the first year, child and adolescent mental health, Ministry of Health and Wellness, particularly the child guidance clinics, and with the most acute needs in St. James. Just to remind you, this is the entity that is at the end of the referral line for all the others covered in the report, and one in dire need of staff to cover the demand. Heart NSTA, the recommendation for them to successfully graduate 25 to 40% more trainees from the hotspot or ZOSO communities. Psychosocial services are critical. Heart needs case managers and psychologists in order to successfully retain and graduate more high-risk trainees, and this is what should be prioritized in the first year. Department of Corrections, Juvenile Corrections, they need their reintegration unit, as you heard so eloquently. This is needed to support the transition from formerly incarcerated or detained individuals who are at the highest risk of both perpetrating crime and becoming victims themselves. For the Ministry of National Security Case Management, for the 25 school strategy to work, case management and psychosocial services, again, are crucial. And in order to cover the estimated demand for case management from the schools at a caseload based on local and international standards, of course, more case managers would be needed over the next 2 years. Perhaps more importantly, the case management database. And I think it might be important for you as a team to speak to the importance of a strong data collection, a strong system for data collection, management, and tracking. The second huge gap, and this was also a part of the discussion after, to improve the effectiveness by better coordination, both through engaging with community members and across the MDAs, and improving the systems that we have within each MDA as well, not being so insular. Service providers in target communities should introduce collaborative case conferences and a coordinator per community to bring MDAs together and increase interagency collaboration. One consideration could be the use of shared spaces to save costs and to improve service delivery. Involving NGOs and CBOs can help connect high-risk youth to available services. Also, where case managers and mental health professionals should be complemented with trained community members who are paid, as the minister pointed out, and who can provide basic support as first responders and referrals, and the use of paid community workers, not volunteers. Even if they're not paid a grand salary, they are given a stipend to help. There are models for that within the MNS and within other MDAs as well. The third gap requiring a recommendation was improving the efficiency and reducing the duplication through better data management and data sharing. This is really important. We're having duplication over and over, and information that was already gathered is missing, dropping through the cracks, and so on. So we need shared or compatible case management databases. We were so happy to hear that the CPFSA system might be able to be expanded in that kind of way. Sharing information about existing clients and services, that can reduce duplication and improve collaboration. Recommending a database management system task force, which could begin to explore the technical aspects if this is not already in place. So what are the key next steps? Again, 3 based on the same 3 recommendations, but how do we actually move forward and get in the water? Each MDA could look at their current resources and supplementary budgets and see what can be done immediately to prioritize the critical areas of need. The costed expenses in the report could inform budget requests for the next fiscal year. They are very clearly set out and very clearly shown how the figures came to be. Second, a small psychosocial working group could be started with key MDAs and partners to develop an interministerial approach with a focus to increase coordination starting at the community level in communities and individuals at highest levels of risk. So a small psychosocial working group, I haven't heard that that had started already. And finally, to set up a database management system working group to explore the technical aspects as was recommended, to improve and share case management databases across key MDAs. The group should start small and have a centralized coordination entity with the technical expertise to lead the discussion and rollout of initial steps. This will take us into the water and heading for our first stop in 5 years. Thank you so much. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Professor Meeks. And so in closing, I would like to say thanks to everyone who made today's proceedings possible. Heather and the EU technical assistance team for leading the process in the procuring of this report, and certainly our esteemed researchers for the presentation, putting it all together, and for the brilliant publication that we may have tangible takeaways from this. I would also like to thank our ministers of government. I know you have very, very busy schedules, and our permanent secretaries for staying the entire time and also engaging in the discussion and so forth. And thanks to all of you for taking the time to be here and to enrich the discussion so that we have clear pathways moving forward. With that, ladies and gentlemen, walk good. Thank you. There's refreshments at the back, so you can partake as you depart.